Let's join Heather Volchko and Ann Potter as they discuss high leverage practice number 17, how to use flexible grouping.
Welcome to A Little TLC, the podcast where we explore the dynamic world of education. Join our host, Heather Volchko, as this season we focus on high leverage practices, known as HLPs. Each episode will examine a different HLP, an essential strategy designed to enhance teaching and improve outcomes across various educational settings. These practices focus on collaboration, assessment, social emotional behavioral support, and instruction, benefiting all K-12 students. I hope you're ready to be both challenged and inspired because this season is all about mastering the HLPs. This is A Little TLC.
Teachers assign students to homogeneous and heterogeneous groups based on explicit learning goals, monitor peer interactions, and provide positive and corrective feedback to support productive learning. Teachers use small learning groups to accommodate learning differences, promote in-depth academic-related interactions, and teach students to work collaboratively. They choose tasks that require collaboration, issue directives that promote productive and autonomous group interactions, and embed strategies that maximize learning opportunities and equalize participation. Teachers promote simultaneous interactions, use procedures to hold students accountable for collective and individual learning, and monitor and sustain group performance through proximity and positive feedback.
For this high leverage practice today, we are talking about using flexible grouping. We've been talking about all kinds of different instructional strategies for the past month or so. And with me this week, I've got Ann, our instructional coach for our early learners. She has a long-standing history of being very effective at working with very diverse and divergent learners in her classroom, and then also coaching those around her to do the same. So I'm really curious to see where this conversation goes with using flexible grouping. So, Anne, in your practice, what has this looked like? How has it worked for you?
Like all instructional practices, it depends sometimes on the day and the group of children. Over the course of time in the classroom, flexible grouping has always proven to be an effective strategy, but depending on the group of kids I had, it was more effective and less effective than others. Instructionally, I could always get my biggest bang for the buck by mixing and matching students. So it looked like a bunch of spaghetti noodles that you just kept stirring the pot, and different noodles would stick together at different points of time in the cooking process. I might have one group of children for math type of activities. I might have another group of children for reading and language arts kinds of activities. Sometimes I wanted a homogeneous group because I was doing a targeted skill that I was either launching some of my advanced learners or reinforcing some of my challenged learners. Sometimes I wanted a heterogeneous group so that my solid learners could reinforce their skills by reteaching and helping out the kids who have not yet got it. So that in some of my settings, it wound up being really effective to use my solid kids as teachers for the challenged kids, because when I had a really solid group, they could explain things more than one way and differently than I explained it, so that the other kids would have a chance of picking up a little bit different way of looking at it and learning it. So when I was trying to instruct new skill, advanced skill, refresher skills, homogeneous grouping worked really well. When I was trying to do some practice type work, then the heterogeneous groupings were very effective. And because my experience is primarily primary grades, because you have such a divergent set of skills across kids at that age, there was always regrouping going on, retooling going on. And depending on what I was doing, that gave me as a teacher tremendous feedback for where my kids were at, so I could target the instruction they needed to advance their skills from wherever they were to wherever it was they were going to be.
There's so much intentionality to what you're talking about. I know I've been in some elementary classrooms where they'll do the popsicle stick style, pick a partner and the first two names come out as a group and the next two names is another group, right? And it is grouping and it certainly is flexible because it's whatever sticks come out of the cup, right? But that's not what you're talking about. To be able to do what you're talking about, you have to have some pretty decent depth of knowledge about the skills that your students have, how they interact with their peers, how they're combination is showing up in that moment. And especially if it's something new, you have to have a pretty quick gauge on did they catch it or not? Can they hold what type of role in this activity that I'm, asking them to get into? There's a lot of just like intentionality and understanding and awareness that you have to have about your students to be able to do everything you just riddled off because it sounds great, but my goodness, like the amount of understanding that you have to pull that off, like that's intense.
You're not going to get all of that all of the time, every time. You're going to sometimes throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. For me, flexible grouping with names out of a cup, I might as well just put you in alphabetical order and sit you next to each other. And
Mhm.
there's nothing very intentional about that. Like I said, flexible grouping, I had different rates of success depending on the groups that I had,
Mhm.
depending on the personalities
Right.
of the kids that were in the classroom with whom I was working. Some were very open to working with others, and others were, don't bother me, man. I got my own things to think about.
Yep.
But as a teacher, my max class size in the primary years, I think, was 24.
Mm.
So I only had to manage those 24 little bodies, personalities, learning types, strengths, challenges to try to best match them. Yes, I can pull sticks out of a cup and say I'm doing flexible grouping, but if I want my bang for my instructional buck,
Mhm.
I need to be intentional about it as often as I can. Yes, there were days where I'm going, I just need to mix this group up and not have those same people working together. And it's not intentional.
Mhm.
And everybody has a new chance to work with somebody. And so I may have 8 different little groups going, and 6 of them are train wrecks. But the other 2, those were a success today. Put those in your back pocket and say, okay, I got to remember that one before. And more often than not, when I would just sort of spitball it and say, okay, we're just putting it together today, the ones that worked were the ones that I went, really? Didn't see that one coming. So even when I spitwad how I pull the groups together, oftentimes I can learn something instructionally about how kids better work together. And I still to this day, I remember I had one kid, and it's long enough ago now. I remember the kid's face, and I don't remember what it was he explained, but it was some sort of math concept, and kids were just not getting it, not getting it, not getting it. And he said, you know, it's like this. And I looked at him, I said, oh my gosh, that is the most brilliant explanation I have ever heard. And it was a kid who didn't talk often
Mhm.
and was very often in the group that said they needed to be taught it again and again and again
Mhm.
in order to get it. But he made it make sense in his head and explained it. And I went, oh, this is the reason why
Mhm.
I always ask kids what they're thinking. Because it was one of those, for the next 5 years I taught, I used his example of that concept. I wish at this point, I wish I could remember what it was, but that interaction, that explanation made such an impression. And then I used him. You're my teacher. And he would rotate through some different groups and then use that idea in the years that followed.
I mean, one of the big goals of using flexible grouping is to kind of instill sort of a guided sense of autonomy. That's exactly what you're talking about is, can I put you in a situation where you've got some pieces and I'm going to guide you through the rest of those pieces? So it's not, I guess, okay enough to just know it or just do it. It's can you actually do that with someone else? Can you, share your skills with someone else? Can you learn their skills while, you're working together? Because that is that independence, that is, how the bulk of life works when you're not just, you're in charge of your own work, period. Pretty much every workplace environment has some kind of collaboration that has to happen with it. And so from an early age, we're now practicing, how can we not just learn the stuff, but can we learn the stuff and practice the stuff and do the stuff with other people around us as well? That's exactly what you're talking about. You're setting them up to be able to practice those skills while they're also working on those academic skills.
And in that small group, part of the thing you're instilling in them is negotiating skills. You get
Yep.
2 people together who are working on a particular problem, they don't agree on the solution.
Mhm.
I had more than one group come up and say, Miss, he said this, but I think it's that. And he's wrong. He's wrong. He's wrong. Well, I say, I appreciate that. You both have a good idea. Now go sit down and you tell him why he's wrong Use all of your explainers. Explain to him why yours is the right answer. And then you go and you explain why yours is the right answer. And then figure out which part of each of your answers really is what has to come together.
Hmm.
But it's those negotiating skills. As human beings, for the most part, we do not work in silos. We work in communities. And part of the benefits of flexible groupings is you give students lots and lots of opportunities to experience different communities and develop those cooperation, communication, and negotiating skills.
Yeah, and I mean, the rest of this episode is gonna go into some more of those, strategies on how to, how do we group or what types of thoughts do we need to be thinking to figure out what kinds of groups might be useful for different activities. But I love the fact that you are calling out that there are so many ways to do it and that it is so contingent on who's in the room at that moment, what happened, what they have for breakfast, all the little things that even with the best laid plans can come in and it's going to need to adjust. But that's based on knowing the players, knowing who you've got, how they're showing up. And that's not just how they're showing up academically, it's how they're showing up socially, behaviorally. Like, how can we truly position all of our students to be successful learners in their own right and with those around them? So, thank you so much for sharing kind of how you've done this in your classroom and how you've been able to walk even some of the most challenging students through having real legitimate academic success simply based on who you get them to work with. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You asked, we answered, and the virtual door is now open. Join us as our team addresses the questions you submitted and provide valuable insights, tips, and strategies. This is your event. Your thoughts drive our conversation. Be that fly on the wall and immerse yourself in the camaraderie and knowledge exchange that happens inside our consultancy. We want to invite you to head over to thresholdlearning.org, your one-stop destination for all things TLC. Here you'll find this episode's show notes and blog pairing, our entire catalog of ACE-accredited, self-paced courses, an ever-expanding bookshelf of resources, and anything else we've talked about. Trust us, there's a ton of benefits waiting for you to explore. Just head over to thresholdlearning.org and prepare for a candid, behind-the-scenes experience as we invite you to eavesdrop on this month's dynamic conversation. See you there. Are you a university looking to enhance your behavior analysis program for your students working in school context? Partner with us to offer supervised fieldwork opportunities that are meaningful to your educators. Our experienced school-based BCBAs provide remote supervision with both synchronous sessions and asynchronous resources that allow students to gain the required hours while continuing their roles in education. With month-to-month scheduling and systematic skill progression tracking, your students will stay on track to pass their licensure exams and advance their careers without disrupting their current jobs. Enhance your program and guide your educator students toward successful careers as school-based behavior analysts. Contact us at supervision@thresholdlearning.org to learn more about this exciting partnership opportunity. Supervision with TLC.
Special education teachers master the art of flexible grouping to tailor instruction and address individual student needs. The grouping patterns they use are highly adaptable, shifting between homogeneous and heterogeneous small groups, pairs, whole class settings, and individual instruction as lesson goals and objectives evolve. This dynamic approach not only accommodates diverse learning needs, but also fosters meaningful academic interactions and collaborative skills among students. Research and professional organizations, such as the International Literacy Association and the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, support the use of flexible grouping. Within this framework, special educators often utilize small groups, typically consisting of 2 to 6 students, for targeted intensive instruction. These small groups can be homogeneous, composed of students with similar abilities to tackle specific skills and concepts, or heterogeneous, where students of varying skill levels collaborate on grade level content and enhance interpersonal relationships. Homogeneous groups are particularly effective for concentrated instruction on high priority skills. Teachers design these groups to address short term goals using explicit instruction techniques and strategies to maximize student engagement and response opportunities. Smaller group sizes, sometimes as few as 1 or 2 students, have proven especially beneficial for improving achievement, with added time and focused practice further supporting student mastery. Conversely, heterogeneous groups mix students with different knowledge and skill levels to enrich discussions, facilitate collaborative problem solving, and improve social dynamics. In these groups, teachers set collaborative tasks, promote productive interactions, and ensure all students have equal opportunities to contribute and learn. By monitoring interactions closely and providing consistent feedback, teachers help sustain group cohesion and maximize learning outcomes. Overall, flexible grouping enables special education teachers to meet diverse student needs effectively while enhancing both academic and social development. When it comes to grouping students, teachers constantly adapt their approach based on the specific skills or learning activities they are targeting. These groupings are not static. They shift in response to students' evolving needs, skills, and knowledge. The art of effective grouping lies in the teacher's abilities to make agile, informed decisions that address these needs. This flexibility in grouping is crucial but doesn't operate in isolation. For it to truly enhance student performance, it must be complemented by other high leverage practices, or HLPs. For instance, decisions about group size and the instructional methods used within these groups should align with evidence based practices and other HLPs, such as HLPs 2 and 6, which emphasize creating a positive learning environment and using data to form instruction. In essence, while flexible grouping is a powerful tool in itself, its effectiveness is amplified when integrated with a broader strategy of skilled instructional practices. Teachers who excel in using flexible groupings understand the power of adapting their approach to fit students' needs and learning goals. They seamlessly vary group sizes, sometimes opting for whole groups, other times breaking down into smaller clusters, depending on what's more effective for the lesson at hand. They also carefully choose between homogeneous groups, where students with similar abilities work together to tackle specific goals, and heterogeneous groups, where diverse abilities mix to enhance discussions and foster stronger interpersonal connections among students. In practice, these teachers might employ cooperative learning structures like jigsaw or quiz trade to address a wide array of instructional objectives, from academic to behavioral to interpersonal skills. They stay attuned to the dynamics within these groups, closely monitoring both individual learning progress and group interactions. Holding students accountable, both as individuals and as a team, helps strengthen personal responsibility and encourages positive interdependence. By providing varied opportunities for all students to engage actively, these educators ensure that every student remains involved and invested in their learning journey. To truly support teachers in using flexible groupings effectively, school leaders should start by offering comprehensive instruction and professional development focused on the nuances of grouping strategies. It's crucial to observe how teachers implement these groupings in their classrooms and provide targeted feedback to refine their approach, ensuring that the practice meets its intended goals and offers constructive guidance when needed. Encouraging educators, whether they're co teaching partners, solo teachers, or teams, to experiment with various grouping configurations can be incredibly beneficial. Highlight the versatility of flexible groupings, reminding them of the broad range of instructional objectives these configurations can address. Given that managing and implementing flexible groups can be complex, it's essential for leaders to regularly check in with teachers who might be struggling. By helping them pinpoint specific challenges and collaboratively finding solutions, leaders can greatly enhance the effectiveness of this dynamic teaching strategy. Assessing the effectiveness of flexible grouping can be challenging because it involves a range of instructional setups, from individual work to whole class activities, that change based on students' needs and learning goals. Essentially, flexible grouping functions like an intervention package, with its success depending on isolating and studying each component of its implementation. To fully understand its impact, we need more empirical studies that delve into the decision making processes behind flexible grouping strategies. Research shows that both homogeneous and heterogeneous small group arrangements, when designed and implemented effectively, can enhance a range of academic and interpersonal outcomes. For these groups to be successful, they need to be structured with careful selection of goals, tasks, and materials, clear instructional guidance, and strategies to ensure that every student has the chance to engage and contribute equally. As with any teaching practice, it's crucial for teachers to monitor student performance closely, offer timely and constructive feedback, and ensure that students are accountable for their own and each other's progress. We're so glad you could join us. Tune in next week as we welcome back Candace McCoy for a conversation focused on high leverage practice number 18, using strategies to promote active student engagement. See you then.
Hey, before you jump back into your busy life, consider dropping a like and follow Threshold Learning TLC on Facebook and Instagram. And if you like our show, share the podcast with your colleagues. A personal recommendation is by far the best way to promote the podcast. Let them know that they can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else they catch their podcasts. Just be sure to leave a rating and review on your favorite platform. You can also email us at info@thresholdlearning.org. We always enjoy connecting with fellow educators and champions for educational justice. You can find everything you're looking for at thresholdlearning.org. See you there.